Hey there, it's Jason. Welcome to the show. I wanted to share a quick word about the episode today. It's one of our special transition to travel episodes where I interview somebody who has rearranged their life to either travel full-time or spend an extended period of time on the road, perhaps move abroad. And I record 2 interviews with them. The first one right before they leave to talk about some of the anxieties, the fears, the things that led up to the decision, and all of the sort of lessons we can pull out from what it's like on the journey before the journey is what I call that time where you're preparing to leave for an extended period of time and you have to make a lot of big decisions in life. Then we catch up with them months or sometimes over a year later to see how things are going, how life on the road is, how it actually panned out. And today I have the wonderful pleasure of bringing on my friend and friend of the show, Maxwell Lee, who decided to move abroad from the United States to Taiwan with his wife and his 2 small kids. So I got to catch up with him just 19 days before they left on this journey. And we talked about why they flipped the script and decided to spend 8 months nomadically as a family before becoming expats. He shares some of the anxieties and fears going into the trip, how they're going to support themselves financially, some of the insurance questions. We talk about a lot of the values that led to this decision. And what you'll really get is an audio snapshot of that time right before you're about to go on a big journey and make a big life change. And then you'll hear a second interview from almost a year later after they spent time living nomadically as a family, slow traveled through Mexico, talking about some of the plans they made and how they changed, what it was like to settle down in Taiwan. I asked him what, if anything, they would do differently. He shares one of his favorite resources for anybody that's slow traveling or moving abroad. And really the intention here with these transition to travel episodes is to give you a realistic snapshot of the reality of that, not the Instagram photo version of that, but what is it like? What is somebody feeling when they're about to make these big life changes to get on the road and travel full time? And then how does that experience match up with the ideas they had on the front end? These take a lot of tender, loving care to produce. Obviously, this episode took over a year to make. So I really hope you enjoy it and you're able to pull out some of those key lessons for yourself, for your next trip, perhaps. Maybe you're in the process of making a life change like this. We're all in various transitions in life at some point. So I think there are some universal themes here that you might find helpful to you. And I really hope you enjoy the show. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey there, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. And talking about filling your life with travel, this is the reality of it, what you're going to hear today. These transition to travel episodes has been a mini series I've done over the years. I don't have loads of them, but I have quite a few. They take a long time to produce, and I really hope you enjoy hearing these 2 interviews today, done 11 months, almost 11 months apart. You'll hear them back to back, and I just want to say to Max, thank you for taking the time to do this. We actually got to meet up in Portland, Oregon before the second interview, so we talk about that. And one thing he brought to my attention is that somehow I never said, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend, which is my customary kind of introduction. I guess because we have this friendship, and I guess I'm just so comfortable with Max. He's such a cool, laid back dude. I don't know. We just started talking and I kind of forgot to formally welcome him. So Max, I apologize for that. And I'm going to say right now, Maxwell Lee, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. And thanks for recording this episode. So let's get into it. I will see you on the other side with some thoughts. Max brought up a couple things that I want to pull out. One of these is these 2 common fears. And I think this was something that kind of caught my attention and something maybe to think about before your next trip if you want to break it down this way and reconcile them. I don't know, it's some food for thought. I'll leave you with that on the back end, plus a quote to send you off on your day. So please enjoy these two interviews with Max, one 19 days before they took off for their nomadic lifestyle and their expat lifestyle abroad, and then the second one when they were nearly a year into their journey. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the other side.
Man, this is exciting.
Yeah, man. How are you?
I'm good. I was just nervous about everything, just the environment. Like I found a spot in the hotel to just chill, but I don't know. To me, everything just feels like it's too loud and there's too many people walking by and stuff.
Hey, listen, this is a travel podcast, so we like a little ambient travel noise, a little hotel background noise never hurt anybody. I always love the ambient sounds of travel. I guess they can be the ambient sounds of just life, right? But there's something, when you go to different places, you hear different sounds, right? That's part of the travel experience as well. So it looks like you're representing your home state of Florida there. What do you got in your t-shirt?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. It's an Amtrak shirt. I'm very nerdy when it comes to transit. So this is, I just picked it up at this conference last month, and I'm already very fond of the shirt.
Well, do you actually prefer Maxwell?
It's either one. Completely.
Either one is fine. Okay. Well, you've probably heard him before because there was a stint for a while where you were leaving me these awesome voicemails every month and just inspiring me weekly. And I think I played one or two of them on the show in the past. So if his voice sounds familiar, and then we've just been in touch through the whole premium passport thing and just staying in touch. And I've come to learn that you have some big plans for your family. And then you offered yourself up as a guest to talk about this and do a special transition to travel episode, which if you've heard them before in the feed, I always get very excited about these because we really get a good before and after snapshot. And I mean, we got a lot to talk about, man. We got a lot to catch up on. So thanks for coming on the show and just being willing to share.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, well, do you want to fill everybody in quickly on kind of where you're at right now in the process? And then we'll rewind and kind of go over the lead up to your decision and things like that. But I don't even know if you're on the road right now or if you're going home for a little bit and then you're leaving. What is your plan right now in this moment in time as we're recording this on December 10th, 2021?
Yeah, timeline-wise, we are very close to moving out of our house and being on the road full-time. And when I say me, there's my wife and we have two young kids.
Yeah. How old are they?
We're 6 and 3.
6 and 3. Okay.
Yeah. So we are, I guess we're heading out on the 29th. So that's 19 days. Preparation wise, we're pretty far away from making that move. We've still got a lot to pack up and a lot of loose ends to tie back home. But as you know, we're actually on the road right now for our last trip away from home before we do pack up and leave for good. And so that it just makes it a lot scarier too. But hey, I don't think I've ever had a single move that was just stress free. So this is just par for the course.
Yeah, and when you say leave for good, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I mean we do think there's a good possibility that we'll return years down the road. So it's not forever, but yeah, for the foreseeable future, we're gonna travel around North America for about 7 months, and then we're relocating semi-permanently to Taiwan, and that will be we'll see 3-4 years, long enough that it's hard to say with certainty. But yeah, we're going to do a little bit of the nomad thing and then settle in Taiwan for a bit.
Okay. So many questions, of course. But let's start here with this decision. Why are you guys going for 7 months around North America? Why did you plan it that way? And then tell people why you're planning on the move to Taiwan, because there's a lot of exciting stuff around that as well.
Yeah, actually, the original intention has always been to move to Asia, and then we selected Taiwan. We can get into that. But once we decided to move to Taiwan, we were going to do that already. The original timeline was to have us there now. But because of COVID, because of a few different things, it's been pushed back a few different times, this move to Taiwan. And now we're pushing it back to August of next year. And that's sort of a deadline because we want to get settled there and then have my son start school. He'll be in first grade next September in Taiwan. So that we want to be there just before that. And then since we kept pushing it back, we were mentally sort of prepared to leave our home by now. And so instead of moving to Taiwan, we decided we'd just use this interim period to travel around and kind of, a few different things, I guess, to scratch that itch of getting out into new environments. And then also give our family the chance to sort of get used to being in different places and prepare us in a way for that move. But it's kind of funny because I always thought that when we did relocate to Taiwan and have that sort of expat experience, I always thought that was going to be the transition to then later doing full-time travel. And instead now we've kind of flipped it a little bit. We're going to get a taste of this traveling lifestyle before moving over there.
And was some of that dictated by the school decision because school's starting at a certain time, so you wanted to get established somewhere and you just kind of saw this gap and you're like, well, we might as well fill it with travel?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, with him beginning in September, that's sort of been a deadline for us to get over there. So
yeah. And talk about your plans in Taiwan. I mean, we know the kid, was it your son or daughter, will be in school? What are you and your wife planning?
Yeah, it's slightly up in the air. One fortunate thing, we're really blessed to be in a position where we are location independent, but not only that, but we're sort of what we call lean fire. So we're financially independent, and we don't necessarily have to do XYZ to make money. We can survive, especially, and this is partially dictated by that move to Taiwan. We can, with the lower cost of living in Taiwan, we can live without any additional sort of active income. We can just live on our investments. So,
and that's real estate stuff, right? For you guys?
Yeah, it's pretty much it's mostly real estate. Yeah, so we being fortunate to be in this position, we can just do what we want to do, what we're most passionate about. And so for my wife, it's right now she's working in investing. She's working in early stage startup investing, and she had been launching her own fund and running her own sort of syndicate and firm to do that. But then she ended up getting a job offer to do basically what she was doing independently. She got a job offer to do that with a firm that's established and with major resources. So she accepted that job. She's been doing it for about 4 or 5 months now, and they allow her to work fully remote. And we'll see if we can kind of make that work in Taiwan. The only question mark there is scheduling, because she's fully remote, but it's more or less on a West Coast U.S. time zone sort of schedule, and we don't know if it'll really work asynchronously if she's in the opposite time zone.
Yeah, right.
So we'll see. I mean, that's partially why we decided to nomad around North America, was to try and be close to that West Coast time zone. But if she doesn't do that, she'll probably want to pursue something in that space, either looking at launching her own fund and firm again, or something similar. And then for me, it's music, and that's
You're going to become a star.
Well, what's funny about that is there's something in Taiwan called the gold card, which they use to sort of, they say it's to recruit sort of highly trained, highly skilled professionals. And one of their categories for the gold card is for the arts and culture. And I just kind of sent an application on a wing and a prayer to see if they'd accept me. There's very, very few gold card holders in the arts and culture category. But I got it. And so I definitely feel like an obligation to pursue that as my number one priority, since they're welcoming me to the country with this special visa. So
yeah. Well, I mean, a couple things I want to pull out of this. I mean, one is there are visas like that, right? If there's a place you want to go, or if you're open, I mean, never sort of, like you said, you sent it off with a wing and a prayer. I mean, you didn't think they were going to accept it. You just never know until you give it a go. Yeah, that rhymes. I don't know why. I'm not trying to make a rap song here. You pursued music before. It's something you're passionate about. So it must be really exciting for you to be going to a place where you guys have this financial freedom. Your child's going to be in school, and then I don't know if will the other kid be in daycare or?
Yeah. That's a little cloudy. I mean, he'll be somewhere. Just whether it would be sort of a public school system thing or just a private daycare, that is still it's available to us technically. In theory, we're supposed to be able to enroll him into the public system there because of that visa, but in practice, supposedly, it's extremely hard for non citizens to get in at those young ages.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, some of these things are always going to be unknowns, right? We'll talk about some of the other unknowns a little bit later, and maybe some of the fears you might have around those. But if any, I just think it's a great reminder that there are all these types of visas out here. I know my friends, Kaz and Craig, they also got and other people I know have gotten a visa to be in the States. They're from outside of the States. I forget what it was called. It was like a special person's visa or something. I don't know. It's for people that are doing sort of unique careers, not arts, but I don't remember exactly the details, but they ended up being able to stay in the USA because they got these special visas. And these things are out there, and you really never know who they're going to take. So always worth exploring those things. I'm talking to you, the listener. If there's a place you want to go, maybe you can find like a backdoor way to stay there a little bit longer, an unexpected way. And I think it's cool that you're filling the time with travel before you're leaving, because instead of just waiting, right? I think it's smart to kind of try the remote work thing, to stay in the close time zone, to see how that goes. And also traveling as a family, I'm sure that, how many opportunities do you get? Well, you could say endless, but you're taking the opportunity while you can. And that's a special thing to have together, that no matter what happens over the coming months and years, you guys will always have that time you spent together on the road, which I think is super exciting. And it's going to be really cool to hear, to check in with you later, because you have like this whole sort of blank slate to kind of create this career in music, whatever that means to you. Actually, what does that mean to you? What does that look like? What does kind of making it in music in Taiwan look like to you? Have you thought about that?
I have, but I don't. This was 6 months ago or so. So I wrote some stuff down. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it involved. There was like a few different pillars. One thing was I wanted to be. So rewind real quick. Previously, in my sort of musical career pursuits. I was teaching, and I was performing a lot of sort of local gigs in cover bands. Um, but what I really wanted to do was write music and like write for singers and kind of make some hits as a writer, sort of behind the scenes, creating the sounds, but not really being on stage and performing.
That's
And
what I love. That's my jam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe we can have a co-writing session sometime.
Yes.
Yeah?
That'd be awesome. And like that's going down a whole nother path, but I definitely have come to realize that that's the way to go, is co-writing. That was something that was like advised to me over and over again. This is back in the early sort of like 2010 timeframe. And back then I just didn't have it conceptually that I felt like very comfortable writing music myself, but then trying to do it collab with random other songwriters, it just scared me. But now I realize that's what people do. I mean, that's sort of the industry and the business, is just networking and co-writing with as many people as possible, so that you kind of spread your reach, and then as people make it, then they pull you up with them. And I just did not get that concept my last go around. But anyway, back, that was 2010, 2011, 2012, and I kind of stepped away from music at that time. And I've been away for a long time until about a year ago is when I started to really put myself back in that space again. And now I'm realizing that actually, it's funny, actually, one of the important things when you're asking me what I wanted to do with music, actually, I do want to perform. I've realized that it just took being away for me to understand that that's, even though I don't really want to be like a big star performing on stage, I just want to have something within me where I'm getting ready for performances in front of like 10 people, whatever, 2 a.m., some like random bar that nobody goes to, whatever it is. I do really get energized by having something on the calendar to get ready for. So that's something that's important to me. But then I do still also want to write music and stuff. So
amazing. Yeah, we'll have to stay in touch on that, because that would be super fun to try. I've done it over Zoom with some friends, but it's not as much fun as being in person. And I do want to ask you later on just some financial advice. Again, I know nobody here is a financial advisor, and we're not saying that, but to get to the point where you're able to generate passive income where you can go and like pursue a dream like this is really cool. So I'm sure you have a few lessons to share from that, and I would like to hear that. But I do want to rewind and just kind of get a sense of what led to this whole decision. Like, you guys could just stay in Florida and you have your life going on, and you got your kids, and I mean, it's a lot more kind of effort to take a whole family out on the road in this way. Maybe more money in some ways when you're traveling, maybe less later on. I'm sure it'll all even out. But when did you guys you and your wife start talking about changing your lifestyle completely?
Probably from the moment we met. So it
really?
it goes back a long time. I think just mentally, we've always thought this way. We started off as a long distance relationship. I was visiting a mutual friend of ours. I was visiting her, and then she invited my wife out and a bunch of other friends, and that's how we met.
And what city was that?
Washington, D.C.
And you were living in Florida.
Yeah, correct. But at the time, fortunately, I had a mostly remote job. So for a good chunk of the year, I could be wherever I wanted to be. And at that time, that was DC. And so that's how we met. And most of our first couple years of our relationship was travel. Like, either I was visiting her, or she was visiting me, or
it was built into your relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or we were traveling together. So,
hey, come to think of it, maybe that's why I've had a few long distance relationships in my day. And it's just like, You know what? I get to travel too. I'm always finding an excuse to travel.
Yeah. So, it's just always been an important, I guess, theme in our relationship and in our lives. And when we got married, before we had our first kid, I think my wife was pregnant at this point, but we were seriously considering moving to Asia to have him.
But
So
why? Why do you want to leave? Why did you want to leave the U.S.? Why?
The adventure, that comes to mind first of all. I can't deny that. There's just an excitement. I've always
just
wanted
the experience.
to. Yeah, and I never have. I've never, aside from it was a short, maybe 2.5 month study abroad. I've never had sort of my base outside the U.S. So I've wanted to establish something in Asia, and my wife as well. She just thought it'd be good for us to have a base and sort of have roots in somewhere in Asia. Also, my wife was born in Asia, so she immigrated to the U.S. when she was 12. So she has a comfort with Asia, and she it's sort of a second home to her, and so there's that. But then also, when we were going to give birth to our first son, we thought about going to Macau for that because, quite honestly, it was a financial reasoning. She would have been subsidized because she's still a permanent resident in Macau, in addition to being a U.S. citizen, and so all sort of healthcare is covered. It would have been very close to free for us to give birth in Macau. And then our son would have had permanent residence immediately upon birth. And something that maybe a lot of people don't know is that Macau, prior to COVID, Macau was just raking in so much money from gambling. It's a gambling mecca. And I think at its peak, the revenues were like 8 or 9 times Las Vegas casino revenues. Like it's enormous. And so Macau government has a huge surplus every year, and they basically pay it out to their residents. So for the last 10 years or so, I'd say my wife's average has been a little over $1,000 each year. She just gets sent to her, being a Macau resident,
Sweet.
Permanent resident. And
I hear everybody Googling right now, how can I become a Macau permanent resident?
Yeah. So if our son was born there, I mean, think about the potential windfall over the course of his life. So we strongly considered doing that, and then adventure for me. So we thought about that, and ultimately we were still sort of tied to our home in Florida and our business that we were running, and so we decided not to sort of uproot all of that. But yeah, going back to before my son was born, we've been really, really strongly considering a move to Asia.
So you must be feeling pretty on top of the world right now, having talked about this for so many years. And now I know you're going back and tying up some loose ends and everything like that, but it's actually happening now after many years of discussions and adventures with, your wife and talking about it. And it must be, how do you feel? Are you...
You nailed it. I mean, obviously there's a mix of emotions, but yeah, just exciting, and I do feel great in a lot of ways. But there's also sort of a nervousness and somewhat of anxiety that I guess is normal, but it's just I'm feeling a lot of things.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about that, because yes, I think that is normal, but this is always a very important part of the conversation, because I really love to discover what some of those fears are, and then later find out, were some of them legitimate fears? Did they come to fruition, or were they just, kind of a mindset? It's just interesting to see how things play out in these episodes, because you don't know. And I'm sure you have worries just as an individual and as a parent, and the state of the world with travel and things like that. I'm just curious about, some of the things you're feeling in terms of anxiety, fears, and things like that. Just be honest, just
I'll
lay it all out here.
there. Yeah.
You're just hanging out with some friends here. We're all part of this community. So
there's a few things that come to mind initially when you say that, or when you ask me. I'll start with the practical, and then move to sort of so practically, I mean, I mentioned that we're sort of financially independent, but just with real estate, and to some degree, I still kind of keep my fingers over things, and it's not like it's not like it's totally operating on its own. So I do have worries about leaving and being far away from our properties and sort of our operations. I had intended to really, really have things up and running smoothly by now, without me. I mean, and I don't. I do still have to watch over stuff. So now I'm kind of thinking, all right, while we're traveling around North America, I can still manage it, but I definitely have to have everything completely out of my hands and feel confident in it by the second quarter of next year, so that when we do move to Asia, I'm not constantly pulling my hair out and worrying and checking up on things. So that's one thing that comes to mind. Another thing is that when we decided to travel around North America, I had a lot of options available, but we ended up settling on Mexico, and my mindset, I try to be as realistic as I can be, and get informed from many different viewpoints. But I would say, sort of somebody who hasn't really dived into it and also hasn't really thought a lot, doesn't have the mindset of traveling all over the world. Like my mom, she's very, very nervous about us going to Mexico. And so while I'm not, because of her concerns, it just amplifies sort of me having to make sure that everything is good everywhere we're staying is as safe as can be, and so forth, because I want to just make sure that there's as little worry as possible for her. And so that's another aspect of the fear that I have. And then, ultimately in the end, when we do sort of settle in Taiwan, there's naturally this, it'll be my first time really living outside the U.S. Not just like, oh, I can head home. I've got the end of the trip coming up, and so I'll just find a way to enjoy myself until the end of the trip. I've never really felt that way on the trip, but I'm just saying, like, if I'm uncomfortable, if I feel a lot of homesickness and culture shock, there's really not an exit coming up soon. So
you're in it to win it.
Yeah.
Have you been to Taiwan before? Or would this be the first time you're setting foot in the country?
No, we've been. We've made. I think my wife and I together, even though neither of us has roots there. Just to be clear, we together, I think we've been there maybe 3 times, and then I had traveled there a handful of times prior to that. So we came to the decision because we really liked the place, because we really like visiting, and all the cities that we had considered in Asia over the course of 2-3 years as we were trying to pick a landing spot. We visited all of them, and kind of did our best to envision what it would be like being there.
Well, in my experience, Mexico, wonderful place to travel, amazing people, delicious food. You're gonna have a blast. A lot of people from this community down there, I know as well. So when we follow up, maybe we'll have to, I don't know. It sounds like you'll be moving around, but if you want people to get in touch with you, we can talk about that stuff at the end.
Right.
If you have, a couple of things that I was thinking about as you were going through that is a lot of the issues that travel forces in some way, right? Looking at your business and some of your worries around the real estate stuff and just making sure things are streamlined and taken care of. Just by doing this trip, it's like forcing you to automate your business even more, which I think is a great thing. You're like, all right, well, I've got these time zone challenges. I want to have the freedom to pursue the music and all that stuff. So I better kind of get my stuff together. And I sometimes travel, I know it's done that for me in the past with my business, right? I remember I was going on a trip and I'm like, I just don't want to deal with this daily. So I have to figure out a solution so I don't have to. And it really forced me to be creative and come up with some things that still give me the freedom and flexibility I wanted to have in order to experience a destination and still make sure that, emails were getting answered and things were done and stuff like that. So I love that travel can force, all these things that have long-term positive benefits, like automating your business, or like, to me, just being minimal, learning minimalism when you start getting rid of all your stuff. If you're traveling for a long time, I think that can be a good thing, can force you to make decisions and destinations like, all right, there's a lot of places to go, like you said, but we're going to choose Mexico. And that's like a whole other thing, right? Like picking a place to go because you're like, you know what? There's a lot of places we want to explore, but we really want to explore this place now. So many sort of, I guess, byproducts and side benefits to, I think, just choosing the travel lifestyle in the first place, forcing these things. Yeah. And I understand like the anxiety from family members or friends who are like, want to make sure you're like, yeah, you don't want to let anybody down or anything like that, of course, but you guys will be fine. Are you selling your home or are you just renting it out? You said you won't really be able to bail when you get to Taiwan. Is that because you're selling everything, or
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how urgent it is. I mean, we can always leave. Actually, it's funny that you say that because Taiwan, again, if people are not aware, geopolitically, Taiwan is sort of in a precarious spot with China, and there's sort of this ever-present concern of invasion. And I have a couple friends who work for the Defense Department of the U.S. With sort of high-level clearance, and they both have warned us a handful of times that we should be prepared to leave very quickly if we need to. You'll get opinions across the spectrum on how serious the situation is, but yeah, it is possible that we need to get out of there. And so, no, it's not like impossible to leave. But that said, your question about our house, we're renting it out. And when we originally purchased it 3.5 years ago, we, being sort of in the real estate business, we were inclined to purchase our home as an investment. We definitely saw it that way. We picked a spot that we felt was going to be a very strong long-term investment. And so yes, selling it really wasn't something we wanted to do. And we found tenants. We found what we believe are really good tenants, and we hopefully that turns out to be the case. And they want to rent for many years if possible. They've said they have a family and they want to be there for a while. So yeah, we feel like if we do eventually return, maybe someday we'll live there again in that same house. But it's it's not ours right now. It's somebody else has the lease.
Yeah, you've emotionally cut the ties to the house in some ways, it sounds like. This maybe is a question that's more relevant to U.S. citizens, but I do have to ask about the insurance thing, which is obviously a big concern for a lot of people, individuals and families coming from the U.S. What are your plans for that? I'm just wondering, I'm sure you spent a lot of time researching this. So what I'm looking for here is like, I remember I just did this recently because I had to do all this stuff for traveling, in the COVID era. And a couple people have asked me, oh, what did you do? I'm like, here, I spent 2 hours doing this, and I'm just going to give you this information in like a minute, and then you're just going to save yourself 2 hours. So, if you're going to save somebody out there, I know this is an ever evolving thing, but if you're going to save somebody out there a bunch of time, what would be your advice here around insurance?
Yeah, you know me well. I have spent a good amount of time on this. But actually, what we're doing, so my wife has health insurance with her job, that I mentioned, her recent job. So in the U.S., we're good. When we're traveling, we're actually taking two separate trips to Mexico. So overall, it's going to be maybe about 6 or 7 weeks at the most at one time. I think 6 weeks is our maximum sort of trip, and we're doing 2 of them, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. And so we're not really going to be out of the country for that long of a period. And so I had considered getting some travel insurance to supplement when we're down in Mexico, but I have a Chase Sapphire Reserve card, and that has pretty decent travel insurance as it is. I've had to actually use it before from a trip a couple of years ago, and it's not huge, but it patches things pretty decently. There's medical benefits within that travel insurance that they offer. We're just going to go as is, just with the U.S. Coverage, and then our credit card benefits for our time in Mexico. And then when we moved to Taiwan, actually, this gold card visa that I mentioned, it enables us to have to enter the national health insurance of Taiwan immediately when we land. So
okay, so it's like a multi-faceted approach, if you will. Yeah, and I think that's a really important tip to pull out is do your research around your credit cards and what types of benefits they offer, because I've certainly saved a lot of money over the years just being knowledgeable of the fact that, for example, my credit card covers certain aspects of rental car insurance. So then you don't opt for the insurance that already covers because the card covers it. So you're not paying double for something you're already covered for. It's just, it can be a pain kind of sifting through and figuring all that out. I don't know if they always make it easy. It depends, I guess, on the company, and depends on what cards you have and all that kind of stuff. So this is just general advice to take a look at the cards you have and see what you may be covered for and you may not be covered for, and make sure you supplement what might be missing. It's a great travel tip. Thank you. Let's talk about how to get rich. I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, that's pretty spectacular. I mean, you guys are a young couple, and I'd say relatively young, right? I mean, you're not the retired age, Nobody, nobody can see you right now because this is audio, but how old are you guys? If you don't mind me asking.
We're late 30s.
Yeah. Okay.
30s, yeah.
So maybe you can just give everybody the 30-second overview on what the FIRE movement is if they haven't heard that before, because I think that is a philosophy that kind of drives the investment decisions, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, FIRE is something, I think on the surface, it's kind of like, duh, right? Who wouldn't want to do this? And it's basically like just make enough money. Financial independence, retire early, or some derivative of those words. And basically, I think the initial thing people think is make a ton of money so that you don't have to work anymore, and you can just retire, right, and do whatever you want. But the critical piece is less about making more money and more about investing it while also reducing your expenses. So,
all good things for anybody, right? Whether you're on board with FIRE or not, right?
Absolutely. So there's some people who preach FIRE, or who really are devoted to the concept, but who live an extremely, extremely minimalist and frugal lifestyle. And then you have sort of the fat fire concept, which is more in line with, I guess, what you might just think when you first think about it, which is high income earners building a huge nest egg and then living sort of luxuriously. But there's people all over the spectrum and everywhere in between, and so I think what binds it and unifies it is that you are sort of aware of your budget and your expenses and kind of living within your means and making sure that you're able to save and invest a large portion of what income you make while you're making it. And whether that means you're really, really tightening your belt and living very frugally so that you can save up more and then continue to live a frugal lifestyle. That's one way to do it. And the other way is opposite. And we're kind of in the middle. So that's what we're going for. And it's something, I think we certainly had some mistakes along the way. And we're just very fortunate that we got a good boost. I don't know if that's sort of replicable for most people, but I just have to put it out there that when we started our real estate company, we had a bit of capital to start with. Some people start with nothing, and then it's much harder in the beginning. And then two, we were very also well connected, so we had a lot of people who did have tons of money who wanted to work with us. So that really helped us out a lot. When it comes to real estate investing, and we didn't even know about the FIRE movement and all of the stuff when we started our real estate company. It's just that in the industry of real estate investing, that's kind of the default idea is, how many units, how many properties, how many doors do you need to get to your freedom number and not have to accumulate more. And so the FIRE concept is already sort of built into a lot of real estate investing terminology and people who want to do that. So we were kind of working towards FIRE without even knowing it initially.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And there is something to whether you're on board for the financial independence, retire early thing. By the way, if you can Google that, there's tons of research. I think there's all kinds of Reddit threads, and I don't know if you have any resources that are your favorites to share, if that's something people are interested in.
No, I am part of all those Reddit communities, the Fat Fire and the Lean Fire, which lets you know where my mindset is. I like to think about all of it, but there's tons of good resources out there. It's really taken off in the last few years. So
yeah, cool. Just having a number to sort of shoot for and not just make it a never ending thing is never a bad thing, right? You can kind of have a goal. And some of the things you mentioned, like having capital or having a network of people that have a lot of money, even if those aren't things you have right now, whatever business you're in, they're things that you can acquire, right? Like you can save money and then have some capital to invest in a business or travel or whatever. I mean, if you've saved money to go traveling, you can save money for a business too. And everybody has the ability to get out and meet people and put yourself in certain circles. And sometimes that happens over time. Sometimes it happens with just a lot of intention as well. And
I've mentioned that when I talk to people, when I get asked that question, I've mentioned, how we were really well connected and we had access to capital that wanted to be invested. But now that I think about it, from what you're saying, it really is, if you have good deals and good ways for people to invest their money, then those investors and that capital will come. Having been sort of around not just real estate investing, but now a lot of startup investing, it's very true. If there's a good deal, then the capital will come. So that's really secondary.
Right. Yeah, and you have to just try to put something together, whether it's real estate or otherwise, that's just providing value to that network. in some way. And if you're looking for money, then probably financial value is what you're trying to provide. So yeah, I know it's a deep topic and everybody has their own individual situation, but I appreciate the sort of the overview. And I've said it before, I think some of the FIRE lifestyle stuff is in very similar to some of the travel values in terms of like maybe, being more minimal and not just kind of trying to accumulate for the sake of accumulating in a never ending quest of getting as much as possible,
Yeah, I'm really excited about that part, actually, about the minimalism sort of. I don't think that we'll be actually full-blown minimalists, but it's kind of moving in that direction. And I think it's one of the great byproducts that will come out of us sort of nomading around North America is that we shed our stuff and we get used to that lack of accumulation.
Right. And it will be really interesting to hear how, when we visit with you again in some months, how the traveling portion went, and then what it's like, the expat life. I think, I've some things to say about that, having lived abroad for a while. I would love to have that conversation, or I welcome that conversation with you after you've been settled down, and to find out, if some of those fears were coming true, or how you feel about all that and what's going on with the music stuff and everything, man. So
my son, I was just going to mention, my son, my older son, I don't think he fully grasps the concept of what we're doing yet. And he continues to talk about wanting things, this and that. And I've tried to explain to him that, we're not really going to have a home base in our own home for half a year. And so we're not going to get things, get this and get that. We really need to make decisions on what we're going to bring with us. So he's got to make those decisions too. Like, he has a certain amount of space, a certain amount of items that he can bring along with him. So that's something I'm trying to show him, trying to explain to him. I don't think he fully grasps it yet, but it's sort of, it's somewhat temporary, because once we get to Taiwan, we'll have sort of a home. But I hope that he's used to sort of the idea of not accumulating things, and not just seeing random things and wanting them. So
yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of, from a parenting perspective, a lot of those values you want to instill. And another thing that we talked about that travel might force, right? It's like, well, you can only carry so many toys, so you better learn how to enjoy playing in those rocks and dirt out front, young man.
Yeah.
I love it, man. So excited for you guys. Congratulations on just all the hard work. And then also just not putting it off any longer, despite, what may be going on in the world, or, what in your guys' heads, or, all the things that make it easy to just stay in the place that you're at. Because it's certainly, I think, in some regards, especially when it comes to having a family, it's not like necessarily the easy choice. Let's all pack up and hit the road, and then we're going to travel around, then we're going to go here. And it's, it kind of throws everything up and upends everything. But that's kind of the point too, right?
Yeah. We'll make it work. It'll work out, right? And so
yes,
you have to just trust that you'll figure things out along the way if you have to.
Will we be talking to a number one hit maker in Taiwan? Taiwan's next great act? Who knows? Maybe maybe a global superstar if that happens. If you're the next like Bruno Mars or something, I don't know who's the most popular male singer right now. You better still come back here, man, and grace us with your presence. Don't forget about us over here on the Zero to Travel pod.
Oh gosh, you're my hype man. You've got the job.
Hey,
don't worry.
All right. Yeah, I'll come and introduce you at the Oslo Spectrum when you come through town. That's awesome. No, we'll be staying in touch as usual, and appreciate your time today and everything you shared. And let's catch up in some months and smush this all into one awesome episode.
All right. Thanks so much, Jason.
Take care. What's up, man?
Whew.
Yeah, I don't know. It's things are good. They're happening fast, but yeah, I don't know. I'm ready to, I guess, reflect. I haven't taken time yet to stop and think about everything, but
Well,
yeah.
now's your time. I mean, speaking of time, we just went through the time machine. Well, actually,
yeah.
we went through real time, but for people listening to this, they just heard our interview from almost a year ago, believe it or not.
Whew,
Almost a
yeah.
year, 11 months, a little under 11 months at the time of this recording. And of course, a lot's happened, right?
A lot, a lot. Yeah. Do you know what the highlight of the past year was, though?
What?
That I got to meet you in person.
Oh, stop it. That was great. I was going to mention that. Yeah, we got to hang out in Portland, Oregon, and, briefly kind of discussed doing the part 2 then, but it was a little too early, I felt like, and also, we were just hanging out and doing random Portland things. So, but that was great. That was really cool. It would have been great to do it there, but that was so nice to get to hang, and hope it's not the last time.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. That is the highlight of my year.
Well, I got to catch up with you a bit, but the listeners didn't. You got to hear what's going on in your life, man. So, I did re-listen to our interview today because I wanted to just kind of get my head around where you were at in terms of like your mindset, and also kind of where you were at in your journey.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And just to kind of refresh your memory, again, recorded almost a year ago. Yeah, your kids were 6 and 3 at the time. We're still the same age. You were 19 days from heading out. You weren't ready to go at all. And you were going to do the nomad thing with your family first for 7 months, and then you were relocating to Taiwan. So first of all, let's kind of see, did the plans that you made actually get executed, or were they changed?
Pretty much. I think, let's see, my kids are now 7 and 4, so they both had birthdays. You just took me back to, oh man, the chaos of leaving our house. Oh, wow. Those 19 days. I had no idea the innocence of Maxwell back then, but like I'd say the week prior to actually starting our journey was just the most intense. And I don't want to go through that again, because clearing out our house and just getting ourselves ready to go was chaotic.
Well, wait, on that, let's get some advice. Like, what would you do different for anybody else that's listening that's going to be making this transition?
I mean, there's the train of thought that if you are moving, it's always going to be stressful. I mean, if that's just your disposition, then I don't know what else I could do differently. It was just very stressful. And the only thing perhaps would be to get started sooner. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how viable that is.
You seem so laid back to me. Are you like a stressful guy, would you say? Or
no, I'm pretty laid back. So I'm rarely too stressed. And that was one of those times that I got a
lot of loose ends to tie and things.
Yeah. I may have been too laid back in the time preceding.
Okay. So that would be the bit of advice there, I guess. Don't be too laid back leading up to it.
Yeah. Because you talking about that now is bringing back some mixed memories.
Starting to have PTSD.
Yeah. But yeah, we launched our sort of our world schooling campaign, if you will, traveling around the world. I say around the world, traveling around Mexico and the U.S. For what ended up being 8 months, actually, instead of 7. We extended that because maybe we can dive into this more later. But we just, when it came time for our flight to actually move to Taiwan, my wife's grandmother was starting to have some health issues, and just a month before that, her grandfather had passed away. So, this is very sensitive timing. And so we just decided to stay an extra month and go down to Miami and spend more time with her family, more time with her grandmother, and then delay our move to Taiwan by a month. So
Yeah.
so
Sorry for your
this,
loss with your family there.
yeah, thank you.
You make your travel plans, but then these are the unpredictable aspects of life. You just never know what's going to happen, which is why like building as much flexibility as possible is always good. I mean, it sounds like you were, pretty easily able to kind of extend and make that decision. And that's wonderful that you guys were in the position to be able to do that. And terrible, hard to deal with things for your family, but you guys got to be there. And that's so nice.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, her grandfather's passing was tough. That actually happened while we were in Portland, so you knew a little bit about that, and we had to cut short our time in Portland by a little bit to get back for the funeral, and again just to be with family. But because that happened, then we were very sensitive when her grandmother had to go to the hospital. Later on, another month later. So it did turn out really well, though. Her grandmother's doing fine now, and we got to spend time with everyone. And then the reason to hurry to Taiwan was to get our kids' school situation figured out, because we weren't able to do that from long distance. We had to get to Taiwan and get our immigration cards before they could register. And so we were giving ourselves sort of what we thought was the bare minimum timeline to arrive in Taiwan and do that based on what advice we'd received. But it turns out, because of our situation, we were able to sort of explain and get everything expedited. And then my older son's school was willing to reserve a spot for him once we were there and talking to them in person, even before we had received the actual cards. Things like that. So actually, everything worked out perfectly. We were able to get everything done in a very, very shortened timeline. And on top of it all, Taiwan in the summertime, July, August is brutally hot, and so we were able to skip over that, by 3.5 weeks. Which, in retrospect, my wife was just like, oh, thank God we didn't come here and be sitting here for 3.5 weeks. Kids aren't in school yet, and it's just hot, and we wouldn't have been able to do much. So it really worked out nicely. We got lucky.
Cool. How was the nomad experience as a family? Let's call it the nomad experience, because I know you guys were on your way to Taiwan, so there's this, but for all intents and purposes, that was kind of the experience, right? You no real agenda, just kind of work, doing what you need to do from anywhere, traveling around.
Yep. So that was awesome. I mean, just to give you a quick summary overview, we spent about a month in Merida, Mexico. We spent about a month in Cancun and Playa del Carmen, and then we spent about a month in Mexico City. And then in the U.S., we were kind of all over, about a week in different spots in Texas and in L.A., San Francisco, Portland. So the U.S. portion moved a lot faster. But we got like a good 3 months in Mexico, and we got to feel out several different bases for a solid amount of time. And yeah, it was honestly, it was pretty awesome. I've reflected on this portion quite a bit with friends, on other podcasts and things. And I really wish that I could provide like what might be a quote unquote more realistic look at things, more balanced look at what the actual experience was versus sort of the dream. But honestly, I mean, it was just awesome. I don't have much negative to share at all. I mean, I really, so just thinking about it sometimes, looking through pictures, is just like, I can't believe that actually was real, that happened, that we got to experience quite a bit without being too stressed or anything. It was just, it was a great experience for my family. So.
Yeah. Awesome. What are some of the pros and cons between the slow travel and the fast travel? Let's call it that.
Yeah. Well, it's probably obvious, but with the slow travel, we really got to settle a bit in places, which was my goal for those Mexico cities. I really wanted to get a feel for what it would be like to be there longer term, potentially for the future, and you get to. It's easier to get work done, I guess, if that's part of the equation for you. And certainly for us, it was important during that stretch of time. So just if you're not constantly worrying about logistics, and you're not constantly worrying about sort of childcare and things like that, then it helps. So in Mexico City, we were able to hire somebody for the month that we were there to kind of help us a few times a week with watching the kids, with taking care of the household stuff. So
was that hard to do and get somewhere and meet somebody and hire them and trust them enough to be with your kids?
Yeah. Well, certainly you have to be willing to trust. So if you think that'd be something very difficult for you, then it makes it much harder. We traveled a lot even prior to this nomadic experience. And so I had a lot of experience kind of looking for childcare on care.com, there's this app called Bambino that's kind of like an Uber for babysitters. And so we've used those a few times. We've found daycares that allow drop-in in different cities that we've been to in the past, in Chicago and Detroit, just from previous traveling experiences. So that is not that's something I'm sort of conditioned to doing. And so for Mexico City, actually, what was interesting is the person that we found wasn't really through the normal channels, like sort of the nanny or babysitting established channels, but this was just somebody totally random in one of the expat groups who was looking for some extra work. And so I talked to her quite a bit back and forth to get a feel for her experience. She had worked in childcare previously, and she's young. She was like, I think late 20s, but going back to college kind of situation. And so it seemed like a good fit. And once we saw her in person, so, pretty much everything that she did was with us, within our presence. So that also helps. It's not like we're just having somebody watch our kids and we're not there at all. So we did let her take the kids to the park a few times after a few weeks. So, but initially we were always around. So there's, that helps.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think, well, those are some great resources, really some practical stuff there. And I think just the mindset of being open to that if you're traveling with kids and knowing that there's some resources out there and that it is possible to get some help along the way. Because I think that's one of the overwhelming parts for a lot of people with kids thinking about traveling around like this is it's all, feeling like it's all going to be on you all the time. And we as parents know how hard that can be, even just over a weekend. Sometimes by the end of the weekend, you're like, all right, I just need a couple hours to recoup here. Not because we don't love our kids, we're not having a great time. It's just, it's pretty full on. You're really responsible for young kids. You have to make sure they're safe all the time. And it's a big responsibility to carry around all the time.
Yeah, I think if anybody wants some advice on how to find them, I would suggest first of all Facebook. I feel like is the most comprehensive resource, because if you go on Facebook, generally speaking, you'll find groups for all the mid-sized and larger cities around the world. There'll be some Facebook group there for expats, or if you're lucky, for families and for parents. So if you just type in XYZ city and parents, or XYZ or families in XYZ, that's the best chance of finding a group. And if there is an established group there, then they're the best resource, because you have tons of parents who are sharing, what they've done, their experiences, and also their contacts and who they recommend. So that's my go-to whenever I am planning on a new city, is to check out the expat group, and then also check for parents and family groups.
Well, let's talk about destinations and things you saw. What were some of the highlights for you guys?
Ooh, besides Portland with Jason.
Yeah. Great city, right?
Great city. Let's see. We were in, so I would say Merida was a good time. It's definitely, I feel like it's gotten a lot of hype in the last few years, and it makes sense because it's a very lovely city and very affordable. So those are like two of the biggest factors for most people in the nomad space, right? Is a place that's enjoyable but also affordable. It was extremely hot though, and we were there during the not hot season, so I just can't imagine how bad it can get the rest of the year. But so that was one drawback, and it's also sort of a slower pace because it's not that large of a city. It's about maybe a little over 1 million people total, and we, it was perfectly nice, but we definitely were more of the speed of Mexico City. It's just massive and tons to do, overstimulation. But it was that was, for us being city lovers, that was such a great experience because I don't know. I mean, it's larger than New York City when you take overall greater Mexico City population. So I mean, as you can imagine,
Awesome city.
Yeah.
How many churros did you eat?
We had some. It's not my favorite. It's not my wife's favorite. My brother-in-law's girlfriend, they came to visit us for a week, and that's her favorite thing. So we had plenty while they were visiting. But yeah, it was such a great place. I mean, I know that's not for everyone. Some people would be sort of turned off by the chaos and the massive crowds. But we enjoyed that. And of course, going out to the pyramids, Teotihuacan, outside Mexico City, that was very memorable. And I hosted a world schooling pop-up hub while we were in Mexico City, which was great. I have a friend who runs the World School pop-up hubs, and she basically organizes these events for 1 week in cities all over the world. She sort of oversees it, but other people can host them actually on the ground in the city. So we hosted the one in Mexico City, and it's just a chance for families to connect, other sort of traveling families, nomadic families, to connect and have sort of that community for the parents and for the kids. So for us, it was great because then I got to meet other parents, but also my kids got to hang out with other young folks. So Mexico City is a place that we definitely plan to go back in the future.
It's a good amount of time you spent on the road with the family, and sounds like you had a good mix of, basing in one place and moving around a lot. Have you noticed any change in the relationship between you and your wife or your kids, or just their personalities from traveling around? I'm just wondering, has anything around the travel experience changed the family dynamic in any way?
There's nothing extremely noticeable. As you kind of alluded to, we were a traveling family before the nomadic experience. We just, shorter trips, but we traveled around a lot. We had done an around the world to Asia previously in 2019. So
the kids were used to it.
Yeah. But I guess the one thing I could say pretty definitively is that our kids got tighter with us. With mom and dad, probably not with each other. They're at an age where they still kind of are standoffish and fight a bit,
Tell me
and
about it.
sort
Because
of
our kids are
begrudge.
pretty much the same age. Well, mine
Yeah,
are
right,
6 and 4
right.
right now. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of like begrudging love between them, but it's like, yeah, he's
it's
my
like best
brother.
friends, but they fight all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. So I feel like that was tangible, that they just, because they're more or less spending all their time with their parents. It's only natural, I guess, but I could feel that um, that our relationships, our bonds were even tighter. Um, but yeah, I mean, my wife and I, not too much changed. We've always, I guess, been used to this and had the same sort of mentality. So fortunately, I think that's one thing that I see a lot of times in conversations about this, about going nomadic or becoming an expat, moving abroad, is for people who have spouses that aren't on the same page, and then they always talk about, well, what can we do? What can we talk about to understand each other better? But for us, I've never had that problem. My wife and I are basically alike in this regard. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I spent good chunk of sort of traveling time with my family this summer, and much longer than the sort of the normal summer holiday. We were together for some months, and it's always a question. You never know. Is there a right answer? It's just an experience, I suppose. But the sort of the Western, let's call it, or at least the setup in Norway, or a lot of times in the States, like you have the kids, they go to daycare, they come back, you're together at certain times of the day, but often those times are just like around work. And when you're traveling, you're together all the time, and they're more incorporated into your life. It's just two different experiences, two different ways of parenting. You mentioned world schooling and some of these other families that kind of adopt this as a thing full-time, homeschooling while you're on the road and whatnot. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's just, it always brings up the questions for me, like sometimes I wonder, like, what's right for your family? I don't know, like what you said about getting closer as a family kind of resonates, because of course they're spending more time with you. So, and parents, kids want to spend time with their parents, but also it's important that they socialize and meet other. The debate rages on, and there's no right answer. But I just wonder if you ever kind of struggle with that or think about it, or just yeah.
I think that there's no right answer. I can say that first. It's really family dependent, but even for certain families, still there's no right answer because they're both good options. So certainly for some, really depends on the family. Some families really, the kids just aren't cut out for it. I don't know, that carries a poor connotation, but it's just not a right fit. And I get that. I see that a lot in world schooling conversation. And the toughest part probably is when you have multiple kids and some really, really want the world schooling life, and then some don't. And then that makes it very tough and tricky. And if we got to if we were in a circumstance where my kids were divided on that, and we were looking at world schooling, I think I would choose, I would opt for staying based somewhere for the one that needs that, because I just want to be sensitive to my children's sort of environment and what they need, what kind of support they need, to progress and develop. So, yeah, I don't know if that does happen in the future, which if we, let me just say, if we are again looking to world school, which we are not currently, I'm not sure if that was clear or not, that we're currently based in Taiwan. But in the future, if we're looking to world school, I think that our kids will be up for it. They certainly have indicated as such so far. But that's a tough thing. I think if I realized that it was best for my kids not to do that, then I would have to let that go for a bit.
Yeah. It's wonderful to be together all the time, and there's a lot of different parts of life. And I agree with you. There's no, it's got to be right for everybody, and what's right might change, in a matter of months.
Let me add that though, that for world schooling, I mean, there's just so many different ways to approach it. And so there's plenty of ways for the kids to socialize and get that aspect. So it's not like they have to miss that just from world schooling, especially now. There's so many resources and so much infrastructure for building communities of families and kids all over the world who are doing the same kind of thing. And then also, there's plenty of schools built for this. Well, I say plenty. Relatively speaking, there's not a lot, but these are also popping up a lot now, and the infrastructure is improving for schooling resources for kids. And so there are places where your kids can kind of experience a traditional school life while you're world schooling, even if you're moving around for a few months at a time. They could kind of plug and play with a new school that runs the same system, and have families and kids all around. So,
yeah, cool. Tell us about Taiwan.
Yeah. So we ended up heading over in mid to late August. And so it was still brutally hot at the time. We went through a short quarantine, three nights quarantine, which is now currently no more. There's no more quarantine in Taiwan. But at the time we had 3 nights. And then when we stepped outside to experience the city, it was just like the sun pounding, like you walk a block and then there's just sweat dripping down. So that was what I was anticipating, because I had visited at the same time in the past and just knew it was going to be hot. My wife, for her, she thought it wouldn't be so bad, and then after that first few days, she was just like, "Oh yeah, you were right." One of the few times I get to hear that. So that was definitely something we remember, and it kind of furthered our resolve to leave every summer. So we'll be in Taipei for the school year, and then we'll leave every summer to go somewhere else, not as hot. But man, I'd say Taiwan, even from the moment we arrived and then went into quarantine, we were just so excited, because you could see and feel the difference. Namely, and this is very personal for us, but namely, like the food. During our quarantine, we were just like ordering off of Uber Eats every meal constantly. Like every single thing was amazing, was delicious. And our kids, especially, are just like, this is the best food we've ever had. And my son, he cracks us up, but he's had a lot of good one-liners, like, how does Taiwan make food this good? He's said that a number of times. He's said he doesn't ever want to leave Taiwan because of the food, things like that. So he's definitely enamored with that. And from a practical perspective, they have been eating really well. Like it's been much less of a chore to get them to eat their meals versus back home or on the road had been.
Yeah.
So
just better quality of food in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I know it's a very subjective thing, but for us, yeah, it's been tremendous. So
I love those kid one-liners. My son had one the other day. He was like, "Does Lady Gaga go swimming?" Like, what? Okay. That's a random question to pop into your head. But so if anybody listening has the answer to that question,
because of all the makeup, maybe. Like, how does it stay on?
Yeah. So, but you guys got settled in, and how did it go with one of the things that there were a couple things. One was your wife's job and kind of working with the time zone challenges and seeing if that was sustainable, and then you on the music side of things. So.
I think we need to do a part 3 and like give me like another nine months. So Well, for my wife, actually, that was one of the changes that occurred. We knew back in June that she was no longer going to be able to keep the job once we moved. It was actually her company was more or less folding. I think they were looking at mergers and stuff, and so once the mergers went through, she wouldn't. The new roles wouldn't allow her to work from Taiwan. So it was a little disappointing because she loved that job so much, and on top of that, knowing that even she loved the job, but she also loved the company and their mission, and so knowing that wasn't going to be happening at least that same way with that same dedication, that was also disappointing. But in hindsight, I'd say it was a really good thing that she's not trying to work right now, because the first month or two of our transition to Taiwan really would have been tough to do while working a full-time job, because in a lot of ways it was a full-time job for both of us to kind of set up the family. I think we did that much faster than we anticipated, though, because I have an aunt who lives there that we could stay with, and we had sort of family and friends to help us with the transition. When I went into it, I thought we were going to just very gradually transition into our base. We're going to take our time to find places to live. We were actually originally thinking that we would hop around every 2 or 3 months to different places, since we were looking at short-term rentals. We weren't planning to stay over the summer. So it just, in a lot of ways, it made sense. Look for something furnished. Don't have a full year commitment so that we can leave over the summers. But we got there. We started sort of house hunting, for rentals and traditional rentals. And there were just so many amazing options that we decided to go take a look in person. And then we fell in love with a place. It was actually the first place we went to see. We fell in love with it. Even though we checked out other places, we just kept coming back to this one. And so we ended up signing like a 2-year lease. And then we ended up really making it a home. I have an office now. The office is also doubles as a music room. Ended up buying a digital piano. I'm going to bring over my guitar and just set up shop there. So we really are kind of going to make it our home and settle in.
Well, I mean, maybe part of that was just feeling at home there in this. I can't imagine you would have signed a 2-year lease if you didn't feel sort of that little something you need to feel when you make a decision like that. You can always break a lease and things are always changeable, but it sounds like the vibe that you guys had as a family being there and everything, just because you planned on this and arrived doesn't mean it's going to feel like the right thing, but it sounds like it felt like the right thing right off the bat enough where you're just like, hey, let's just lock this in. Plans change, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. We really took to Taiwan. I'd say me and the kids, we have enjoyed it. But it's really been my wife who has just I think she found her place for life.
Really? Wow.
In a lot of ways. I mean, she's also sort of a transient person by nature like me. So, maybe the better way to describe it is, for this time in her life, this is like the best place. But it has been like, we just arrived and she just, you could see that, like, she had found the place that it was meant to be. I mean, she absolutely loves it there. She's gotten super involved in so many things, and really helped our family get settled, my kids in their schools, and things like that. Because, but as I mentioned, that's kind of been a full-time job, at least for the first month or so, was just like getting our house, getting everything in order. Even though it was partially furnished, we still ended up getting more things. And then all of the, utilities, things like that's a chore in itself. And then, it's just, and also in the beginning, the kids' school was kind of shorter days, until for preschool, my younger kid, they were advising sort of keeping him on half days until he got comfortable. So those first 2 weeks, it was like we dropped him off and then we were heading back to pick him up. Like, what's going on? We didn't have time to like get anything taken care of. My older son, so in first grade, in elementary school in Taiwan, they have short days, half days for 4 days out of the week. So just one full day. And so, yeah, so with my older son too, he was kind of getting dropped off and picked up, it seemed like almost immediately. But after a couple of weeks with him, then we enrolled him in sort of like the full day care. So even though school gets out at noon, he would stay and they'd like watch him, help him do his homework. There's some extra tutoring and stuff until 4. So now we're sort of back to a full day with both of the kids. And so that helped, that has helped a lot in getting things squared away. But yeah, my wife, she was getting involved in philanthropic networking groups, courtesy of my aunt, who is just super involved in so many things in Taiwan. So she's helped my wife get plugged into a lot of things, business networking groups, things like that. And so my wife just kind of found her place in her community in so many different areas. And she just, and then for the food for her too, like that's probably, I'd say for her, that's the largest factor. For me and the kids, like we love our food, but we can survive if that weren't the case. But so she's just fallen in love with Taiwan very thoroughly, and so we'll see what the future brings. But right now she loves it. Yeah.
The help you got from your aunt certainly, that certainly helps a ton. But you can find somebody in a place, like, even though that's hard to research out or whatever. These are sort of the unpredictable things. If somebody's listening and they want to move to a place and they're like, "Well, I don't have an aunt there." You can often find some really nice people, whether it be another expat or somebody like that, who can be a conduit to kind of bring you into different parts of a city. I remember first time I went to Buenos Aires, I met an expat guy, and he just like kind of took me under his wing for whatever reason, and just we ended up like traveling a bunch together and doing a bunch of cool things together. And you just can come across those people, and whether you have them in your family or not, it's nice that people on the ground are willing to kind of like take newcomers in and show them around.
It's funny. There's another family with several kids, young kids, and they connected with me in one of the Facebook groups because we were moving over more or less at the same time, and I feel like we kind of, it just worked out where we were able to help them get settled. I'm sure they would have been fine without us, but what ended up happening was I got our immigration cards right before they did, so I was able to tell them exactly what to do when they went into the office. And then the second home that we looked at, that we liked a lot, but just not as much as the first place, we ended up telling them about it because they'd been looking for houses for weeks. And so then they went to take a look through our agent also, who we set them up with. And then they love the place, so they put in a deposit, and that's actually where they live now. And then at my son's preschool, she was looking for preschool. I told her we were checking this place out.
You're paying it forward, right?
And then, she's her kid is in that same preschool, and then her older kids are going to my son's elementary school. After he enrolled there, we told them, it's a good school. You guys should go check it out. So they ended up. Our kids are all at the same 2 schools, and they're living in the house that we looked at. So
have you penned any hit songs yet? Or what? One of the things you said, part of the gold card visa, you kind of felt obligated to pursue this music thing. 'Cause it's one of the reasons you guys were there. But, you also have life circumstances and things. One of the things I'm pulling out from this conversation, then once you answer this question, but, it always takes longer than you think, I think, to settle into a new place in some ways. A lot of details to figure out and stuff. So be forgiving on yourself if you haven't, made the progress you wanted in your business or your music career or whatever. But yeah, for you, has it been something that you've been able to, that was one of the things you're like, I got to find the sort of balance, the time to work on it and things like that. You're
totally right. I mean, I have to be forgiving to myself and allow myself the space I need, instead of just saying, man, you haven't done this, you haven't done that yet.
Well, especially for creating music,
yeah.
you need space and time. It takes a while.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially for me, because I'm trying to get back into it, and I haven't really been in the music space for many years, and so it's really it's tough trying to get that back and remember what were the things that I needed to get my creativity going. So at the same time, entering this, I always knew this is the kind of thing that I could keep pushing back, because I did that for many years. It was a few years ago, even when we were in the US, that I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing music again. And then I just keep other things getting in the way. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that later. Since it wasn't a habit of mine anymore. It's just easy to postpone. And so, there's that. There are those two issues that I have to reconcile, whether I need more space because I need other things, I need to take care of other more pressing concerns, but also am I just delaying things just for the sake of putting it off? And so, long story short, I need to hit the ground running on that. I think we've actually missed. I forgot to mention that right now I'm not in Taiwan. I left for the U.S. A week ago to come back to help my dad with a major surgery he was undergoing. So,
is he doing okay?
He's recovering really well right now. So it's I guess they've said
I didn't want to bring it up unless you did, because
yeah. Well, I mean, not to get off topic, but that's a whole nother thing I felt like is worth discussing, is the whole expat move and then being away from family and this type of situation.
Let's talk about it, because we're on that now.
Okay. I mean, for us, because that this was a factor in our discourse for the last few years, was my parents are getting older. It's and we are location independent. Should we be moving closer to them, or should we be moving to the other side of the world?
Yeah.
And that was
a popular debate, of course, for everybody.
And that was a tough thing for us to make a decision on. And it's why it's a large reason of why we didn't move years ago, is that we kept thinking, I don't know if this is a good time. But of course, the reality is, if you keep waiting, then it'll never be a good time. But of course, sure enough, when we finally do make the move, and we were moving with the idea, my parents' intention was to come with us. Just a few weeks later, they actually had flights to come to Taiwan and live with us for like half a year. But then my dad started having health problems right after we left, and so that's been tricky. Fortunately, it does look like they'll probably still be able to come over. Of course, it's just delayed, but they'll probably be able to come over early next year, and then we'll have a good half a year together at that point as well. So we're still not apart that much, but yeah, it's something that it keeps coming up, and it's reinforced the idea that we have to stay flexible and do what feels best for all of us. So
that's a great way to go about it. I'm glad to hear he's doing a lot better. And this is a big part of life, right? Your parents getting older, and then, like you said, I mean, to your point, it's like, well, if you wait, they're only going to be that much older. So it's such an individual situation. But to think about setting up your life in a totally other country, and you've been able to do that in a pretty short amount of time in the grand scheme of things, to come back and do it again if you have to is, again, you can always change your mind, reverse decisions. Being flexible, I think, is
Yeah, so I know most people wouldn't be in the same situation, but for us, one of the things that helped is that my parents are really supportive of the move to Taiwan, and they felt like it was a good place for them to be as well, to spend time. So So,
That's
we
not,
had
yeah,
that
that's not the case
intention
for
of,
everybody.
right.
Right. Yeah.
So we had that intention of all of us sort of still getting to spend a good amount of time together just
Sure.
over there. And hopefully we can still do that. So,
Well, I mean, that could be another bit of advice we can draw out of this for anybody listening. It's just, you can have that conversation with your family. It might not look like the same as your situation where, the family wants to move to Bali with you or whatever, but perhaps they are excited about spending months in a place that you're in, or meeting up somewhere in between once a year or whatever. And there are certainly ways, and I know people that live near their parents and they only see them every couple months anyway. So it's like, well, maybe you'll see them more depending on your situation. There's a lot of situations out there, but I think it's just worth the conversation with your family if you wanted to relocate and you're worried about, parents getting older in that case or whatever. Well, let's all just talk about it and kind of see how this looks. And maybe there are some exciting possibilities for this, period of your life or whatever. So yeah, I guess I want to wrap things up with just this idea of looking at where you were and sort of the expectation you had around all this versus the reality of it, how you guys are feeling, if it was like worth it kind of thing. Yeah, just kind of like your overall sort of takeaways, maybe some advice for people that are kind of in that process where you were earlier on, like preparing and then going, and yeah, anything you want to share here. It's a lot.
Yeah, the advice question is tough too. I mean, without more specifics, I guess it's tough to give good advice. So just very generally speaking, I think just going for it. If it's something you want to do, go for it. Don't wait. We waited years, and it's something my wife agrees. She's the one who said it, is that we could have done this years ago and it would have been just as good. We didn't have to keep waiting. And I think that's true to some degree. I think, of course, personal circumstances might be that you need to sort of get certain things set up. You need to get certain things done to be able to do it in a responsible manner. If that's what you want to do, you can also throw caution to the wind. I think things will work out. But yeah, I think if realizing that this is something that's very doable, I think is what I would, in hindsight, if I were going through everything again, I would tell myself that I can do this sooner and I can make it happen. It's personally,
like more doable than you might think.
Yeah. I think we're seeing that now as it becomes more mainstream, as more and more people have that location independence, I think, and are doing this, and are choosing to travel. I think people are realizing it can be done. But yeah, for me personally, like I go back like over a decade and think I could have done this when I was a solo and single, and I was just and I thought about it back then, and I was just afraid to go for something like that on my own. So yeah, that's probably the most general advice that I could offer. For us, like the nomadic experience was fantastic, and I definitely wouldn't trade that for anything. Those 8 months that we were traveling, particularly the time in Mexico when we were really like, is all about new experiences. I think the expat time in Taiwan has been good for our family, but I think that's definitely, there's still a lot more to go to making it very successful. We're just in the very beginning so far, and in the honeymoon phase, which is naturally exciting. But I'm generally a very realistic person. I usually can give pros and cons, which is why I was saying from the nomadic experience, it's odd that it was just such a great thing for us, and it's hard for me to say bad things about that.
You just got to be honest, right?
Yeah.
And that's your honest take. I mean, listen, man, I'm so happy for you guys. It's awesome to just see all of the plans come to fruition, and that everybody's digging the vibes where they've been and all of the various parts of your journey. And I appreciate your presence in my life as a friend. And I really look forward to staying in touch. And I just really appreciate that you got on board to do, these. I mean, you don't really have anything to promote or anything. You're just like, hey, I'm just a member of this listening community. I want to just kind of share my experience, offering that up, and then taking the time to do the two interviews, this far apart, and stay in touch and everything. It really means a lot, man. So
I definitely, I should do promotion. I'm just terrible at it. And
you can share anything you want here. If you got anything to share.
Well, yeah, like I said, when I get back to Taiwan, I need to hit the ground running with the music. Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say about Taiwan and perhaps expat life in general is that, when I was last sort of fully in the music industry and business, that was like a decade ago. For me, like it was always so easy to find musicians and just like if I wanted to play, if I wanted people to jam with, rehearse, potentially form a band, it was just super easy online. You could just connect with people and filter out, talk to people, figure it out. In Taiwan, I mean, I'm finding it sort of a roadblock. It's tough it's not like I can just go online and shoot out a message and then get like 10 musicians to respond saying, yeah, let's jam. It's that's been tricky. Partially because of the language barrier, I guess. That's probably a large part of it. I'm not very fluent in Mandarin, and I cannot write at all, read or write. So that just, from an online perspective, perhaps that makes it tough. And so I'm limited to a much smaller pool. But yeah, I just haven't really known exactly what to do or where to go. When I go out to shows and stuff, then I do meet people. And so that's probably the best way to go about it. I did not do that a lot the first 2 months that we were there. So that's probably something I'll need to do. But that was just something I had noticed when I was there, is like, I didn't give it much thought beforehand, because it's in the past when I've needed to meet musicians and find people to play with, it was so easy. And so I just didn't think about it before getting there.
And you'll get there, man. I mean, like you say, you haven't fully dived in, and
yeah.
I had the same experience here in Norway, and when I kind of had that intention to start playing music with people, and then I started really kind of putting myself out there a bit more. Like the bass player in our band, I met him at the playground. He was there with his daughter. The lead guitarist, he's a guy that was just my neighbor, and I just basically brought up to them, hey, do you play? I just started asking all kinds of people, hey, do you happen to play music, whatever. And so it'll come, man. But I'm still waiting. I want to hear. You can get back, you can get settled. I'm hoping that we're connected on WhatsApp, and I'm hoping to start getting some audio files sent over. Like, hey man, here's something I'm working on. What do you think? Right. If you need a little accountability buddy there,
I appreciate that.
Putting myself out there. Listen, man, I'm wishing you and your family all the best and good health to your dad.
I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't put it out there. So I don't have a good landing spot. Like, my website is a mess. But I guess if you go on YouTube, you could find the music that I'm going to be working on, but a lot of the music that I've done in the past at Project Maximus. So that's my handle on YouTube. And then just the non-music stuff, I have a YouTube presence as well. That's Firewalking Journey.
Yeah. Okay. We'll find those and link up to them in the show notes. So
perfect.
I need to follow your journey. Thanks, man.
I appreciate it, Jason. It's always fun to chat and catch up.
Absolutely. Let's do it again soon. There you have it. I want to thank Max for just sharing so openly and for taking the time to be interviewed twice for this show to put together this very special Transition to Travel episode. I want to thank you, my friend, for spending the time to go on this audio journey today. It's fun doing a little time traveling. I love that. And one of the things that Max brought up was the fears when we were talking about that on the front end before his trip. He talked about practical fears, and then the other fears were sort of, I guess I'd bucket them into maybe mindset or lifestyle. And I never really broke down fears that way. I mean, fears are fears, right? We have to overcome them to do certain things we want to do in life. And I think when it comes to, let's say, taking quote unquote risks or perceived risks in life, fear is a part of that process and overcoming fear. And, is overcoming even the right word? Perhaps it's just letting it be there, letting it exist, but acting in spite of the fear. And I've found that has been a great muscle to build over time. It doesn't always mean that the fear goes away, right? You could still be on the plane. You've done everything you could to set yourself up for whatever nomadic life or whatever you want to do. And there you are. You're still kind of nervous, and maybe a month in, you're nervous about other things. And there's always stuff to kind of be worried about and have anxiety about. But when we think about practical fears, these ideas of what are we going to do for insurance, let's say logistics or, flights or whatever the case is, I feel like in some ways, maybe the practical fears might be good to tackle first if you're stuck, because those are solvable problems, right? Like some of the practicalities behind travel are just solvable problems. It's not rocket science. I mean, if you look out there, you'll see there are plenty of people living this lifestyle, doing it, filling their lives with travel, and written tons of articles about it, as you know, if you've done research on anything. And you can find solutions to some of those practical fears. So I think that if we're looking at somebody who is maybe stuck in a fear-based mindset and it's preventing them from kind of moving towards a travel goal or a dream, whatever that is, perhaps this is a way to look at it. I don't know. I've never really thought about it this way until I kind of re-listened to this episode. But perhaps there's something to tackling those sort of logistical fears first and then building some momentum. Something to think about that I wanted to pull out. And this idea of uncommon visas, which we talked about, there are new visas coming out all the time. So you can be on the lookout for those if there are specific places you want to go. Just a lot coming from this episode. So I thank you so much for spending the time to be with us here today and to listen to it. And I'm going to leave you with a quote that I think sums up a big part of the transition to travel process. This quote is a Zen saying. It goes, "Knowledge is learning something every day. Wisdom is letting go of something every day." That's powerful stuff. Letting go. I feel like that's a huge part of any transition. In order to move from one chapter in life, go through a transition and move to another, there are going to be things we have to let go of. And perhaps some of the fears come from not just where we're going, sort of the unknown fears of the beyond and the future, but maybe there's some fears around the things we need to let go of too, like a job or a certain career or an identity or a lifestyle. So it goes on both sides. So anyway, I thought that was a very wise saying. Knowledge is learning something every day. Wisdom is letting go of something every day. What can I let go of today? I don't know. I'll think about it. Maybe you can do the same. I'm sure there's something. Anyway, thank you so much. Always appreciate your presence here. And I wish you a great week. We'll see you next week. Peace and love to you and yours. Thanks again. Cheers.